When humans first joined the Galactic Council, it felt like a dream come true. After centuries of searching the stars, Earth had finally found other intelligent life. The galaxy was full of different species, each with their own customs and technologies. For the first time in history, humanity was not alone. The Council welcomed them with open arms, promising peace, progress, and cooperation among all worlds. People on Earth celebrated. The news channels called it the Golden Dawn. The first human ambassadors stood proudly under the shining halls of the Council and believed they were part of something greater. In those early years, humanity shared everything they had. They offered new medicines that could heal wounds in seconds, energy systems that made whole planets cleaner and safer, and ideas that changed the way the Council's worlds worked. Humans were creative, adaptable, and determined. They helped fix what other species had ignored for centuries. Slowly, Earth's influence began to grow. Colonies expanded, trade increased, and soon human ships could be seen across the galaxy. For a short time, it truly looked like peace had found its home. But behind those polished smiles in the Council chambers, jealousy was growing. The other species began to whisper among themselves. They feared how fast humans learned, how quickly they rebuilt, how they never gave up no matter how hard things got. Some called humanity reckless, others called them dangerous. They are too unpredictable, one alien senator said during a private meeting. Give them a century and they'll try to rule us all. The Council didn't say those words aloud, but many agreed. It started slowly. Trade restrictions appeared. New rules made it harder for humans to buy or sell in the markets. Their technology was suddenly labeled too risky. Colonies that had once been allies were now forced to cut contact. Humans tried to reason with them, sending messages explaining that they only wanted to help. But the replies grew colder each time. The warmth that had once existed between Earth and the Council began to fade. And then the first betrayal arrived. One morning, the people of Earth woke to shocking news. A human diplomatic ship sent to negotiate trade terms had been destroyed in deep space. The Council called it an accident, claiming pirates were responsible. But the investigation revealed fragments of alien weaponry from the Council's own defense fleet. When Earth demanded an explanation, the Council refused to speak further. Instead, they passed a resolution that banned humans from entering Council space for security reasons. Shock turned into confusion, and confusion turned into anger. Across Earth's colonies, people felt abandoned. Supplies from the Council world stopped arriving. Food, medicine, and tools became scarce. Outlying human settlements far from Earth were cut off completely. The Council called it quarantine, claiming that humans carried unstable genetic material that posed a threat to other species. It was a lie, but one the galaxy believed. For the first time since joining the stars, humans were truly alone. The following months were filled with pain. Entire colonies vanished from contact. Some starved, some fought back and were crushed by Council patrols. The images that leaked through were unbearable. Burned settlements, broken ships, children crying for help that never came. Earth's leaders pleaded for the Council to stop, but their messages went unanswered. The Council had decided the humans were a problem that needed to disappear quietly. People on Earth felt betrayed beyond words. The same halls that once welcomed them now denied their existence. The same leaders who once promised peace had turned their backs. Every human could feel it in their hearts. The betrayal wasn't just political, it was personal. They had trusted the Council, shared their knowledge, and opened their homes. And now they were being erased. Yet even in that darkness, humanity didn't collapse. They gathered what little strength they had left and started to rebuild. Old industries on Earth came alive again. Scientists worked day and night in hidden laboratories, determined to find a way to survive without the Council's help. Engineers repaired old ships, turning them into something stronger. Families volunteered, workers sacrificed, and slowly, quietly, humanity began to stand again. No one forgot the betrayal. Stories spread across every human settlement. Stories of how the Council had turned their back, how their allies had watched in silence. Parents told their children to remember, not to hate, but to never forget. The pain became their motivation. They would not beg for mercy again. They would rise on their own terms, but there were still those who tried to hold on to peace. A small group of human diplomats requested a final audience with the Council. They wanted to speak, to find even a small chance of understanding. The Council agreed, though no one truly believed it would matter. When the diplomats arrived, they were met with cold faces and guarded words. One of the council members spoke, "Humanity has grown too fast. Your kind threatens the balance of our worlds. We must protect ourselves." The human envoy replied with calm dignity, "You fear us because we remind you of what you could be. We sought peace, not power, but if you treat us as enemies, you may one day see us as such." Those were their last words. The diplomats never returned. The council claimed their ship suffered a technical failure on the journey home. No one believed it. After that, silence took over. Earth stopped sending messages. The colonies stopped reaching out. To the rest of the galaxy, it looked as though the humans had finally accepted defeat. The council congratulated themselves in private, saying the human threat had been contained. Worlds that once relied on human trade quickly moved on, replacing them with other partners. The memory of Earth slowly faded from conversation, and so the galaxy went back to its usual politics, unaware that humanity was not finished. Years passed. 10 long years of silence. Not a single human ship was seen beyond the edge of the solar system. The council's sensors occasionally picked up faint energy signatures, but nothing conclusive. Some joked that humans had destroyed themselves in anger. Others said they had retreated to their home planet to live out their days in isolation. The council didn't care as long as they stayed gone. On Earth, though, a fire still burned. The betrayal had changed humanity forever. They no longer looked to the stars with wonder. They looked with resolve. The people had learned that survival meant self-reliance. Hidden far beneath the planet's surface, new technologies were being built, ones unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Generations worked in secret, passing down knowledge, building fleets, training minds and hands for a day they all knew would come. Every human remembered the feeling of helplessness when the council cut them off. Every family that lost someone remembered. Every worker who sacrificed in the rebuilding remembered. The silence of 10 years wasn't surrender. It was preparation. But for now, the galaxy knew nothing of that. For them, humanity was a fading memory, a story of a species that rose too quickly and paid the price. The Council's records even erased the official mention of Earth's membership. History was rewritten to say that humans had never been part of the Council at all. It was easier that way, easier to forget. And yet, even as the Council celebrated another anniversary of peace among the stars, a few older members couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. There were whispers from the edge of the known systems, strange signals, unidentified objects, and the faint hum of engines no one recognized. When questioned, the Council dismissed them as rumors. After all, humanity was gone. What harm could ghosts from a forgotten planet cause now? Back on Earth, in the quiet glow of a rebuilt city, a commander stood before a massive window looking toward the stars. Behind them, rows of sleek black ships waited in silence. They were unlike the old fleets, faster, stronger, forged from the lessons of betrayal. The commander's eyes reflected the light of distant stars as they spoke softly, almost like a whisper. They thought we were finished. Let them think so a little longer. The silence of Earth would not last much longer. The galaxy had betrayed its most faithful ally, and in doing so had awakened something it could never control. The people of Earth were patient. They remembered. And they were waiting for the moment when the stars would remember them too. After the betrayal, the stars went quiet for humanity. The once busy communication channels fell silent, and the trade routes that connected Earth to the galaxy disappeared. The grand cities on other worlds that once welcomed human visitors now closed their ports and erased every trace of Earth's presence. For 10 years, the galaxy lived without hearing a single word from humanity. The Council called it peace. They told their people that the human problem was over, that Earth had learned its lesson and would never threaten them again. But deep inside, not everyone believed it. Some of the older members of the Council still remembered the fire in human eyes, that strange determination that no other species had. They couldn't forget how humans always found a way, even when everything seemed lost. Still, they convinced themselves that Earth was finished. It was easier to believe that humanity had faded away quietly than to imagine what might be happening behind the dark side of that blue planet. Far from the Council's polished halls, Earth was anything but quiet. The world had changed. Gone were the days of endless debate and politics. The people had become harder, focused, and united by a single purpose: survival. They no longer looked to the Council for permission or to alien markets for help. They learned to rely on themselves. The factories that had once built peaceful research ships were now busy creating machines that could defend the planet. Energy plants powered underground networks. Every invention, every project was built with one goal: never to be helpless again. The silence was not a sign of surrender. It was the sound of preparation. While the galaxy moved on, humanity was rebuilding in the shadows. New alliances formed among Earth's scattered colonies. Some of them had survived on distant moons and planets, living in secret and keeping contact with Earth through hidden signals. They shared resources, built new technology, and trained quietly. The people knew that one day they would return to the stars, but this time, they would go as equals. Or not at all. Life on Earth was difficult during those silent years. The betrayal had left deep scars. Many families still mourned those who were lost in the Council's crackdown. People had to rebuild from almost nothing. But even in those hard times, there was something powerful growing: unity. For the first time in centuries, the people of Earth worked as one. There were no more divisions between nations, no more competition for power. Everyone knew the same truth. The galaxy had turned against them, and the only way forward was together. Children grew up hearing stories about the Council's betrayal. But instead of teaching hatred, those stories taught lessons. Lessons about trust, strength, and resilience. They were told to never forget what happened, but also to never lose their humanity. The elders reminded them that revenge alone would destroy what made them human. The goal was not to destroy the galaxy, but to make sure no one would ever dare betray Earth again. Meanwhile, the Council's worlds began to notice strange things. Cargo ships traveling near the edges of known space reported shadows moving in the dark. Shapes too large to be meteors, but too silent to be ships. Patrols sent to investigate found nothing, yet some never returned. The Council dismissed the reports as superstition. The humans are gone, they said. It's only ghosts and echoes. But some of their own captains began to doubt. The empty silence around Earth felt too heavy, too controlled. It was as if someone was watching from far away, waiting. In the quiet cities of Earth, the people lived in a new rhythm. They had learned to hide from the Council's deep space scanners. Underground centers buzzed with engineers and scientists working in secret. New propulsion systems were being tested, ones that didn't rely on the old Council technology. Artificial intelligence was improved, but always kept under human control. The old lessons of trust and betrayal guided every decision. Mistakes of the past would not be repeated. The oceans had become training grounds for future explorers. Massive hangars under the ice of Antarctica held new types of ships, silent, black, and fast. The designs were nothing like the Council's sleek vessels. These were built for endurance and power, not for beauty. Each one was crafted to survive alone in deep space, unseen and unstoppable. To outsiders, Earth looked silent and defeated, but under its surface, the greatest fleet in human history was being born. There were moments when people questioned the path they were taking. Some feared they were becoming like the Council, cold and ruthless. But then they remembered the suffering of their colonies, the betrayal of trust, and the silence that followed. The pain had not faded. It had become the foundation of their strength. The leaders of Earth believed that peace without respect was an illusion. If the galaxy ever wanted peace again, it would have to come through equality, not control. As the years passed, rumors spread through the outer systems. Traders whispered about strange encounters near the uncharted sectors close to Earth. They spoke of ships that moved faster than anything known, ships that appeared out of nowhere and vanished just as quickly. No one could confirm the stories, but the rumors were enough to make the Council nervous. Patrols were increased, and new surveillance satellites were placed near human territory. Yet even with all their technology, the Council found nothing. The space around Earth remained silent, too silent. Inside the Council chambers, arguments began to rise again. Some believed that leaving Earth alone was a mistake. Others said that interfering again could awaken old tensions. The decision was made to send a small observation team, unarmed, just to check if the humans were still there. Weeks later, that team's ship vanished without a trace. The Council called it a technical malfunction, but whispers began to spread among their worlds. What if the humans are still out there? One ambassador asked quietly. What if they are waiting? On Earth, life continued quietly. The people no longer looked to the stars with the same wonder as before. They looked at them with purpose. The old monuments of peace still stood in the capital city, but they were covered in vines and dust, reminders of a time when trust had been given too freely. Every evening, lights glowed from underground hangars and the sound of engines echoed through the tunnels. The young generation born after the betrayal grew up strong, disciplined, and aware of the world beyond their sky. They trained not for revenge, but for readiness. They studied every mistake their ancestors made when dealing with the Council. They built systems that could protect humanity from any future threat. The leaders knew that one day the Council might come again, maybe not with weapons, but with lies and promises. When that day came, humanity would not be fooled. They would be ready to meet the galaxy on their own terms. Then one night something changed. Deep in the Council's outer territories, a fleet of their ships was conducting routine patrols. They detected a faint signal, a human code, one that hadn't been used in over a decade. Confused, they tried to trace it, but the signal vanished. Moments later, their long-range sensors picked up movement. Thousands of small objects like fragments of metal drifting through space. When one of the patrol ships got close, it realized too late what it had found. The objects were pieces of destroyed Council drones, freshly shattered, still glowing with heat. Before they could send a report, their communication feed cut off. The Council's command center went into chaos. Reports came in from multiple sectors, sudden blackouts, missing ships, broken signals. They thought it was a system failure, maybe a solar storm, but across every affected region, the same message was recorded by deep space sensors, a faint pulse repeated over and over in binary code. We remember. No one in the Council understood what it meant. Some thought it was a natural anomaly. Others called it a prank by rogue colonies, but there were a few who understood the tone of that message. It wasn't a greeting. It was a reminder. The humans had gone silent not because they were defeated, but because they were preparing. Back on Earth, inside a hidden control room deep beneath the surface, a group of people watched holographic maps of the galaxy. One of them adjusted the display, showing Council territory, trade routes, and defense lines. Everything was being recorded, analyzed, and stored. They had waited long enough. The time for silence was almost over, yet even now the people of Earth did not celebrate. There was no laughter, no cheering. They knew what was coming and they understood the cost. They were not a people seeking glory. They were a people seeking justice. Every step they took was guided by memory, not hate. They would never strike first without reason, but if the Council dared to act again, humanity would not hold back. As the 10th year of silence drew to an end, the stars over Earth burned brighter than usual. Some said it was just a natural event. Others whispered that the heavens themselves were warning the galaxy that something was coming. On that night, as the world slept, a single command was entered into a secure console. Somewhere deep underground, hidden hangar doors began to open, revealing rows of ships that had never been seen before. The silence before the storm had ended. Humanity was awake again. 10 years had passed since humanity had fallen silent. To the galaxy, Earth had become a legend, a memory that slowly faded into myth. Most believed that humans had either destroyed themselves or chosen isolation forever. The Council no longer feared them. They had removed all human history from their records, erased every image of Earth from their maps, and even denied that humans were ever part of the Council. Life in the galaxy returned to its usual rhythm. Political meetings, trade agreements, and quiet wars between rival worlds. The Council believed they were safe, but something strange began to happen. In the dark edges of space, far from the Council's main systems, ships started disappearing. Patrols reported faint signals like ghost transmissions, but when they tried to trace them, the signals vanished. Some said it was space debris, others claimed it was pirate activity, but deep inside, the Council's intelligence officers knew it wasn't random. The disappearances followed a pattern. They formed a circle, one that slowly tightened around Council territory. On one quiet night, a small outpost on the edge of Council space detected a massive energy surge. The officers on duty checked their systems again and again, thinking it was a malfunction. But then the stars outside their observation window flickered, not because of any storm, but because hundreds of ships had appeared out of nowhere. The outpost tried to send a signal to the central command, but before the message could go through, all communication went dead. The last thing the scanners recorded was a simple code written in human format. "This is Earth's fleet. Judgment has arrived." That transmission spread across every corner of the galaxy in seconds. The Council tried to jam it, but it was too late. The message had already reached millions of worlds. Every government, every colony, every station heard those words. Many refused to believe it. Humanity was gone, they said. It had to be fake. But deep down, everyone who had once known humans felt a chill. The way those words were spoken, calm, clear, and final, it could only be them. The first visual feat of the fleet shocked even the oldest admirals. Human ships no longer looked like the fragile crafts they used to fly. These new vessels were black as night, with no visible markings, no lights, and no Council-style identification codes. They moved in perfect silence as if they were part of the darkness itself. The fleet didn't just appear, it unfolded, thousands of ships emerging from hidden gateways that no one even knew existed. The Council realized too late that Earth had not been sleeping during those 10 years. They had been building. Across the galaxy, panic spread. Council worlds went into emergency lockdowns. Military fleets scrambled to defend their borders. Every news broadcast repeated the same phrase: the humans have returned. Old enemies united out of fear. Ambassadors who had once laughed at humanity now begged their leaders to prepare for defense. Still, no one truly understood how much Earth had changed. On the first day of contact, the human fleet didn't attack. They didn't send threats or demands. They simply arrived and stayed in formation, silent, watching. The Council tried to open communication, but every attempt failed. Then, after hours of uneasy quiet, a single transmission appeared on every screen in the Council chamber. A human figure stood in the center of the image. Their face was calm, their voice steady. 10 years ago, they said, you betrayed peace. You left our people to die. You erased us from your history. But we did not vanish. We endured, and now we return. Not for vengeance, but for justice. The message ended and the screen went black. For the first time in generations, the Council chamber was silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Moments later, the human fleet began to move. It wasn't a wild attack. It was precise, methodical, and terrifyingly organized. The first targets were communication relays, the very satellites that connected the Council's worlds. In minutes, entire sectors went dark. The Council's commanders tried to counterattack, but their fleets were met with overwhelming resistance. Human ships didn't use old weapons. They had developed new systems, fast, adaptive, and far beyond what the Council understood. Across the stars, people watched in disbelief. Worlds that had once been proud members of the Council saw their skies light up with silent flashes, and then everything went black. But even in the middle of chaos, humanity's forces avoided civilian zones. They didn't target innocent lives. Every strike was calculated. Every move was deliberate. It was as if they wanted to send a message. We remember what you did, and we will not become like you. Meanwhile, the Council leaders tried to communicate directly with Earth. They sent pleas for negotiation, promising new alliances, shared power, even forgiveness, but there was no response. To the humans, words had already lost their value. The time for talking had ended long ago, when the Council turned away from their cries for help. Back on Earth, the people didn't cheer for victory. The mood was serious, quiet, and heavy. They watched the events unfold through encrypted channels. Every person knew what was happening, and every person understood why. They didn't celebrate the destruction of their enemies. They mourned the years that had been stolen from them. The betrayal had forced them to become something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. They had wanted peace, but peace had been denied. Now they were simply reclaiming what had been taken. In the Council's war room, panic turned into disbelief. None of their defenses worked. Human technology had advanced beyond imagination. Their ships could disappear from radar, jam entire networks, and strike faster than any known engine could react. The Council's generals realized that they were not fighting the same humans they had betrayed. These were survivors forged in silence, disciplined, united, and unstoppable. One Council member finally said what everyone else feared to admit: we have created our own destroyers. In less than a week, the human fleet reached the outer edges of the Council's capital system. They still hadn't sent another word. The Council gathered every remaining fleet for one last stand. The battle lasted only a few hours. When it was over, the skies were filled with debris and the once mighty Council's defenses were gone. But again, the humans didn't finish them off completely. They stopped. They hovered in orbit, silent and waiting. Then came the second transmission. The same human voice returned. "We did not come to conquer," it said. "We came to remind you. When you betray trust, you destroy the foundation of peace. You left us no choice but to defend our name. From this moment on, the earth will stand apart. We will not rule your worlds, but we will never bow to them again." And with that, the transmission ended. The human fleet began to withdraw, vanishing the same way it had appeared. No one knew where they went. Some said they returned to Earth, others claimed they moved beyond the known stars. The council, shattered and humiliated, was left in silence. Their fleets were gone, their authority broken, and their reputation destroyed. Across the galaxy, everyone talked about what had happened. The humans had returned not as victims, but as a power greater than anyone imagined. Some called them saviors, others called them monsters. But deep down, everyone knew the truth. Humanity had not wanted this war. They had been forced into it by betrayal and fear, and now they had shown the price of underestimating them. Back on Earth, the skies were calm. The people returned to their work, their cities, their families. But something in them had changed forever. They had proven to the galaxy that they could not be erased, that they would always rise no matter how many times they were pushed down. Yet even in victory there was no joy, only quiet reflection. They had defended their name, but at a cost that could never be forgotten. The stars above Earth shone brighter that night, reflecting in the calm oceans and silent cities. People looked up and whispered the same words, "Never again." They didn't mean war. They meant betrayal. They meant silence. They meant trust lost and earned the hard way. And while the rest of the galaxy tried to recover, humanity began to look beyond the stars once more. But this time they weren't searching for friendship or approval. They were searching for their place, not as a lesser race, not as victims, but as equals among the stars. The Council's betrayal had changed everything. It had destroyed the old humanity and forged a new one, united, patient, and aware of its strength. And though the war was over, every person knew this was not the end. It was the beginning of a new era, one built not on promises but on truth. Somewhere in the deep of space, far beyond any known system, a small beacon pulsed with a soft light. It was a human signal repeating the same words in every known language. "We are awake. We remember. And we will never be forgotten." The message had spread across the stars like a storm. "This is Earth's fleet. Judgment has arrived." Those words echoed through every world, every colony, and every council chamber. Even on distant moons, people whispered the same thing. The humans were back. And this time they were not asking for peace, they were enforcing it. The first strikes had already happened. Communication hubs were gone, defense networks shut down, and fleets that once protected the Council's borders had vanished in minutes. The galaxy had never seen such precision. No chaos, no random attacks. Everything was done with discipline and purpose. Humanity's return was not about destruction for revenge, it was about justice. They wanted the Council to feel what Earth had felt years ago. Powerless, uncertain, and exposed. At first, the Council didn't understand how humans had changed so much. When they last saw them, Earth was struggling to survive. They had limited resources, weak ships, and no allies. But the fleet that now stood before them looked like something out of a nightmare. Beautiful, silent, and efficient. The ships didn't shine or display banners. They moved in formation, dark as shadows with no need for words or warnings. The Council realized too late that humanity's silence over those 10 years had been the sound of creation. Across the galaxy, panic began to grow. Civilian worlds locked down their skies. Merchants refused to leave port. Even the most distant species who once ignored human affairs started to prepare for the worst. The Council tried to show strength by sending their elite fleets to defend key systems, but it didn't matter. The human ships were faster, smarter, and unpredictable. On one world, a Council fleet commander watched in disbelief as hundreds of human vessels appeared from the void. They didn't fire immediately. They simply surrounded the planet, cutting off every possible escape route. Then a single message appeared on every screen. "Evacuate the Council facilities. We will not harm civilians." The Council didn't believe them at first, but when they ignored the warning, the human ships targeted only the government towers and defense grids. Civilians watched from their homes as precise beams of light cut through the sky, striking only military buildings. In less than an hour, the battle was over. No cities burned. No innocents were touched. Yet the entire government of that planet was gone. Humanity had won without destruction. People across the galaxy couldn't believe what they were seeing. They had expected anger, cruelty, and chaos, but the humans showed control. They fought like soldiers who carried pain in their hearts but not hatred in their minds. The Council's media tried to twist the story, calling the humans terrorists, but recording spread too fast to hide the truth. Everyone saw the same thing: discipline, justice, and silence. In secret, the Council began to panic. Their leaders gathered in hidden chambers, arguing over what to do. Some demanded to fight back, others wanted to surrender. But the problem was deeper. No one trusted each other anymore. Every species blamed another for starting the betrayal years ago. The unity that once held the Council together began to fall apart from the inside. The humans hadn't just attacked their ships, they had broken their pride. Meanwhile, the human fleet kept moving, system by system. Every time they arrived, they sent warnings first. Leave your weapons. Leave your arrogance. Learn what it means to be forgotten. And then they acted. Their attacks were fast, clean, and precise. Every strike reminded the galaxy that this was not about revenge, it was about memory. On one remote mining planet, alien workers looked up as the sky filled with dark ships. They expected death. Instead, they saw supplies being dropped: food, medicine, tools. The message that came with it said only, "Humanity remembers the workers who were left to starve." The people didn't know what to say. The very race they were taught to fear had shown them mercy. The rumor spread quickly. The humans were not destroyers. They were balance bringers. Back on Earth, the fleet's command center glowed softly in the darkness. Screens showed the movement of every ship, every battle, every signal. The commanders didn't celebrate. They spoke in calm tones, giving orders, adjusting plans, always careful not to harm the innocent. The mood was heavy, like a storm that had not yet finished. They were winning, but victory didn't bring joy. It brought silence. A silence filled with the memories of those who had died when the Council betrayed them. Among the people of Earth, there was no cheering in the streets, no festivals. Everyone understood that war was not glory. The faces of the lost still lingered in every home, every story, every breath. The old generation had taught the new one that revenge was not strength, discipline was. And now that lesson was being shown to the entire galaxy. The Council tried to form alliances. They reached out to other powers in nearby sectors, begging for help. But those powers refused. They remembered how the Council had treated humans. They remembered the lies, the greed, the arrogance. No one wanted to stand with them now. For centuries, the Council had ruled through fear and control. Now, for the first time, they were the ones afraid. In a desperate attempt to stop the human fleet, the Council offered peace talks. They sent messages across every frequency, begging for dialogue. The humans received them, but they didn't respond right away. For days, the galaxy waited in silence. Then finally, a transmission came through, a single voice. "You offered peace once before," the voice said, "and then you broke it. You left our people to die and erased us from your history. Peace is not a word you can trade when it suits you. It is something you earn through truth. Until then, you will live in silence as we did." The message ended and the stars went quiet again. As the fleet moved deeper into Council space, one by one, their power centers began to fall. No one could stop them. But still, humanity did not conquer worlds or take control of resources. They simply dismantled the Council's control systems and left. The galaxy's political network, once centered around greed and manipulation, collapsed in weeks. Entire star systems found themselves free for the first time in generations. People began to speak of Earth not as a planet of vengeance, but as a force of reckoning. In the markets and colonies, stories grew. Some said the humans had become part of the darkness itself, able to move unseen through space. Others said they had learned to harness energy directly from stars. Whatever the truth was, one thing was certain: no one would ever underestimate Earth again. Back in the Council's capital, their last fleet gathered to make a final stand. They lined their ships in massive formations, ready to defend their home. But when the human fleet arrived, there was no battle, just silence. The Council leaders looked at their screens, confused. The humans were not attacking. They were broadcasting something. It was a recording, a collection of voices from the past, Pleas from human diplomats, cries for help from colonies, messages the Council had ignored long ago. The entire galaxy listened as those old voices echoed across the stars, reminding everyone of what had really happened. Then the screen turned black again, replaced by one final message. Now you understand our silence. The human fleet slowly turned away, leaving the Council's world behind. No weapons fired. No cities were destroyed. The Council leaders sat in their chambers, trembling. They had prepared for war, but instead they were left with shame. As the human fleet withdrew, their message spread through every world they had touched. Respect is earned, not given. Peace is built on truth, not fear. Even on distant planets where no human had ever set foot, people began to repeat those words. They became more than a warning, they became a lesson. The galaxy realized that power without humanity leads to destruction, and silence can be stronger than any weapon. On Earth, as the fleet returned, people gathered on the high cliffs overlooking the oceans. The night sky was filled with streaks of light as the ships descended through the atmosphere. There were no fireworks, no grand speeches, only a quiet feeling of pride mixed with sorrow. They had shown the galaxy their strength, but they had also reminded themselves of who they were. The world that had once been betrayed had now become a symbol of resilience. The people of Earth didn't see themselves as conquerors. They saw themselves as survivors who refused to forget. And as they looked up at the stars, they knew one thing for sure. The galaxy would never again mistake their kindness for weakness. Somewhere beyond the outer rim, a final signal was sent from the fleet, a message carried across the void. It simply said, "The balance has been restored. We remember." And for the first time in a long while, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter. After the humans had shown their strength and precision, the Council thought they could still recover. They had survived worse battles before, or so they believed. But they underestimated one thing. Humanity had not come to fight for glory or conquest. They had come to correct the injustice that had been done to them and their colonies. The galaxy was in shock. Entire sectors of the Council's space had gone silent. Trade hubs, defense outposts, and communication relays were no longer functional. Entire fleets had been neutralized, not with random destruction, but with exacting precision. Every action by Earth's fleet was calculated, each strike a reminder of the 10 years of betrayal and suffering. Council leaders met in emergency chambers. Panic had replaced their usual arrogance. Some argued for surrender, some for a final all-out counterattack. But fear and mistrust had already taken root. Many Council allies refused to send reinforcements. They remembered the Council's previous betrayals, the greed and manipulation that had ruled their alliances. This was the first time that the Council truly stood alone, and for the first time it was powerless. Meanwhile, humanity did not move hastily. Earth's commanders believed in strategy and patience. Their fleets didn't burn planets or conquer worlds. They disabled weapon systems, cut off supply lines, and took control of key Council infrastructure. Each move sent a clear message. You betrayed us. You left our people to die. Now you must face the consequences of your choices. Across the galaxy, other species watched in awe and fear. They had never seen a people act with such unity and control. The humans moved like a single organism. Each ship, each soldier, and each command perfectly synchronized. Every strike was measured, every decision deliberate. They didn't seek power. They sought balance. The ones who had once dismissed humanity as naive now understood what they had ignored. Humans were not weak, and their patience had been a weapon all along. As human fleets advanced, entire sectors of the Council's holdings collapsed. Communication lines failed first. Then military stations stopped responding. The Council attempted desperate measures, but every fleet sent against them was met by invisible forces, ships that seemed to appear from nowhere and vanish just as quickly. No one could predict where the humans would strike next, and no one could stop them. In one of the final Council strongholds, leaders convened for what they thought would be their last plan of defense. Every fleet they had left was gathered to protect the capital system. But as the humans approached, nothing happened immediately. No weapons fired. No shields flared. Silence filled the void of space. The Council's leaders were terrified. They didn't understand the humans' restraint. Then, as suddenly as the fleet had appeared, a message arrived. The voice was calm, steady, and commanding. You betrayed our trust. You left our colonies to starve. You erased our people from your history. We did not forget. Now your power has ended. Your fleets, your governments, your walls of arrogance, they are gone because we remembered. And because we acted. Remember this, peace cannot exist without justice. Truth cannot exist without respect. And you have shown neither. The message ended and the human fleet withdrew. It was not a retreat. It was a statement. Every council leader understood that humanity had achieved what no other species could. They had dismantled an empire without conquest, without unnecessary bloodshed, and without losing their humanity. In the weeks that followed, the council's collapse became complete. Entire governments fell. Communications failed across star systems. Military structures that had once been seen as unbreakable crumbled. The humans did not occupy worlds, but the effect was absolute. The Council's empire had vanished from the galaxy as completely as if it had never existed. The galaxy struggled to comprehend what had happened. Worlds that had depended on the Council were suddenly free to govern themselves. Trade routes reopened, but not under old hierarchies. Entire species reevaluated their alliances, unsure of whom to trust, uncertain what to believe. The name of Earth spread everywhere. Fear mixed with respect, and every civilization understood a simple truth. Humanity was not a force to be underestimated, and silence could be stronger than the mightiest weapons. On Earth, the people did not celebrate. They returned to their cities, their laboratories, their homes. The fleet slowly returned to orbit and then to hidden bases across the planet. There were no parades, no cheering crowds. The people reflected quietly. They had shown their strength to the galaxy, but the cost weighed heavily on them. The memories of betrayal, of suffering, of lives lost were still fresh. Humanity had defended its name, but the burden of those 10 years of pain remained. The leaders of Earth sent one final transmission across the galaxy. It was short, clear, and solemn. The Council betrayed peace. They left our people to die. They erased our history and our colonies. They believed silence would make us vanish. It did not. Let this be the last lesson for any who would forget. Humanity does not forgive betrayal. Respect is earned, trust is not given, and kindness is not weakness. Across the galaxy, every species received the message. The humans did not demand obedience. They did not seek revenge beyond what was necessary. They simply reminded the galaxy of what had been done to them and what it meant to betray humanity. Some tried to question the fairness of humanity's actions. Were they justified? Some said yes, others said no. But the truth was clear. Humans had acted with restraint, precision, and purpose. They had avoided unnecessary bloodshed. Yet they had made the galaxy understand the price of betrayal. No empire could rise again without remembering the lesson. As the Council's remnants scattered, some fled to distant systems, hoping to survive unnoticed. Others tried to rebuild their influence quietly. But the shadow of Earth's fleet loomed over them. The memory of those calm black ships moving silently through the void, striking with precision and disappearing, would haunt them forever. In the quiet cities of Earth, life returned to a new normal. Children played under stars that were no longer watched by a controlling empire. Scientists continued their work, building new technologies not for war but for survival, exploration, and discovery. Families spoke quietly of the events that had changed the galaxy, passing on the lessons of patience, discipline, and strength. Yet humanity did not stop looking outward. The galaxy had changed, and the humans knew that their vigilance could never end. Betrayal had nearly destroyed them once. They would never allow it to happen again. Training, research, and preparation continued quietly, far beneath the surface of cities and oceans, in hidden hangars and laboratories. Every citizen understood that strength was not measured by conquest alone, but by the ability to survive, endure, and act with purpose when the time came. The stars above Earth were brighter now. People looked up and whispered quietly, remembering those who had been lost, those who had suffered, and those who had survived. Humanity had defended its honor and claimed its place among the stars, but they had done so without losing themselves. They were not conquerors, they were guardians of their own name. In the deepest reaches of space, the human fleet continued to patrol in secret. Every ship was a reminder that Earth's people were awake, alert, and united. Every world, every colony, every settlement was watched and protected. The galaxy might fear them, and some might respect them, but one thing was certain. No one would ever betray humanity again. And in the hearts of the people of Earth, a quiet vow remained. They had been wronged, they had been silent, but now the galaxy would remember them, not for their kindness alone, but for their resolve, their endurance, and their unbroken spirit. The galaxy had witnessed the strength of humans who had endured betrayal and emerged stronger than ever. And though the council was gone, the lesson remained. The price of betrayal was not just conflict. It was a reckoning that could not be ignored. Humanity had returned, and it had changed the stars forever. After years of preparation, silence, and careful planning, humanity had shown the galaxy its true strength. The Council's empire had collapsed, their fleets destroyed, and their influence shattered. Systems once controlled by arrogance and lies were now free. Humanity had not sought to rule or conquer. They had only reminded the galaxy of a simple truth. Betrayal has consequences, and strength is measured by endurance, discipline, and justice. For Earth's people, the campaigns across the stars had been more than strategy. They had been a test of patience, of restraint, and of morality. Every strike was calculated, every move deliberate, and every message carefully considered. There was no hatred in their actions, only memory and purpose. They had the power to destroy entire worlds, yet they had chosen to act with precision and control. The galaxy had learned the difference between vengeance and justice. Now the time had come for humanity to return home. Ships that had moved like shadows across the void slowly began to withdraw, leaving systems intact but forever changed. Across the galaxy, people watched as the black vessels disappeared like smoke fading into space. The humans had arrived, reminded the galaxy of their strength, and now they vanished, leaving no trace but a message that would echo for generations. The final transmission from Earth was simple, yet profound. It reached every corner of the galaxy, every colony, every world that had felt the fleet's presence. We did not come to conquer. We did not come to destroy. We came to remind you of truth. The Council betrayed peace. They left our people to die. They erased our history. We survived. We endured. And we remembered. Let this be a lesson for all who would think trust can be broken with impunity. Humanity will endure, and humanity will protect its name. We return home. We will watch, and we will remember. But we will not rule. The galaxy is yours to choose as long as truth and respect guide your actions. As the message faded, Earth's ships disappeared from every sensor, retreating to hidden bases across the planet. The galaxy, for the first time in decades, was silent. For the Council's former allies, it was a time of reflection. Many had learned what had truly happened during humanity's absence. Some worlds mourned the mistakes of their past. Others feared the quiet power that had been unleashed and withdrawn. Every species understood that the humans of Earth had changed everything, not through conquest, but through their strength, their patience, and their will. On Earth, life slowly returned to a quieter pace. The fleet remained hidden in secret hangars and deep space stations, ready if ever needed. Laboratories, research centers, and cities flourished under new rules. Humans no longer looked to the Council for guidance or approval. They were a united species, forged by betrayal and strengthened by endurance. Parents told their children stories of survival, patience, and discipline, not tales of war, but lessons about resilience, trust, and justice. The memory of the Council's betrayal had left scars, but those scars became the foundation of humanity's renewed purpose. Every citizen understood the value of truth, respect, and patience. They had been tested, and the galaxy had been reminded that humanity could not be erased. The children grew up knowing that strength did not come from domination, but from endurance, unity, and moral clarity. Yet humanity did not celebrate the destruction they had caused to the Council's fleets. There were no festivals or parades. They understood that the galaxy had been spared much worse because of their restraint. The fleet had acted as guardians of their own name, not conquerors. They had taught a lesson that would be remembered, not feared for the wrong reasons. Humanity's story was now one of survival, patience, and discipline, the quiet power that comes from knowing who you are and what you stand for. The former Council worlds began to recover slowly. Without the chains of bureaucracy and corruption, many systems rebuilt their governments in new ways. Leaders who had once relied on fear learned humility. Stories spread about the humans who had arrived silently, struck precisely, and then disappeared just as quietly. Across the stars, the message was clear. Betrayal has consequences, but restraint and honor can change history. In Earth's command centers, veterans of the fleet reviewed every operation, every move and every message. They were not proud in the traditional sense. Pride was a dangerous emotion, often leading to recklessness. Instead, they were calm, reflective, and patient. They had done what was necessary, and now they would continue to watch and protect. Humanity had proven itself, but they had learned another lesson as well. Vigilance must never end. For ordinary citizens, the galaxy had become a safer place. Trade routes reopened, alliances were reformed, and new relationships were built. Yet even with peace restored, no one dared to forget what had happened. The memory of the humans' return remained in every system. It was a quiet reminder that trust could not be abused and that every species must respect the other's right to survive. Earth itself changed after the fleet's return. Cities were rebuilt with new systems of defense, but also with focus on exploration, science, and culture. Humanity no longer needed permission from the galaxy to thrive. They looked outward with curiosity, not submission, and they shared their discoveries carefully. Trade and communication began again with distant worlds, but always under their terms, with caution and wisdom born of betrayal. At night, people would look to the stars and remember the years of silence, the betrayals, and the preparation that had led to the fleet's return. Those years were painful, but they had forged a new humanity, one capable of endurance, reflection, and moral judgment. The fleet remained ready in hidden space docks, but humanity no longer needed to act aggressively. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Historians and storytellers began to record the events with care, ensuring the lessons would not be forgotten. They told of the Council's betrayal, of the years of preparation, and of the fleet that had arrived silently, struck decisively, and then withdrawn. The story became a legend, not about conquest, but about patience, justice, and the human spirit. It reminded every generation that power comes with responsibility, and that trust is sacred. The galaxy was at peace, but it was a new kind of peace. One built on understanding, respect, and a quiet fear of betrayal. The humans of Earth had chosen not to dominate, not to conquer, but to act with purpose and restraint. Their return had changed the course of history. They had demonstrated that endurance, patience, and unity could achieve more than brute force ever could. As the years passed, humans continued to explore the stars, seeking knowledge and opportunity, not domination. They built new colonies, created alliances carefully, and maintained the lessons learned from betrayal. Earth became a beacon of discipline, resilience, and moral strength. The galaxy remembered that betrayal had consequences, but also that the human spirit could endure anything. The final message of humanity remained etched across the stars. We are Earth. We remember. We endure. We protect our name. Betrayal will not be ignored, but restraint is our strength. The galaxy is yours to shape, but respect is earned and trust is sacred. Remember this. And with that, humanity withdrew into the calm of their own space, leaving a galaxy that would never forget. The stars above Earth shone brighter than ever, reflecting the lessons of endurance, strength, and unity. The humans had returned, acted with purpose, and vanished again. Their story had ended, but its impact would last forever. The betrayal had shaped a new humanity, one that would watch the stars silently, patiently, and with quiet power. They had proven that they could endure, that they could act with discipline, and that they would never allow their name to be forgotten. And in the quiet of space, the humans looked outward once more, ready to face whatever the future might bring, together, united, and unshakable. The galaxy had learned its final lesson. Humanity cannot be underestimated. Humanity cannot be erased, and humanity will endure.